Hey guys, before we start off this review, I have a little contest going on. If I reach 100 subs by April 1st, I will do a random drawing for a $20 Amazon gift card. So tell your family, friends, and enemies and acquaintances. Thank you. Hey guys, it's Frajki here. Today we're going to review one of my favorite movies of 2017 is Blade Runner 2049. Now, if you would have told me 5 years ago we were getting a new Alien movie and a sequel to Blade Runner in the same year, I would have not believed you. The first Alien is my all-time favorite film, and Blade Runner is tied with second. So I know when I first heard this film was getting announced, I was really iffy on it because how can you make a sequel to Blade Runner? Blade Runner is Blade Runner. You can't do anything besides what Ridley Scott did in 1982. I mean, the film is outstanding. The first one, visually, I can't believe that no CGI was used. Like, this is filmmaking at its finest. So when I heard that, it's kind of iffy. And I was like, is Ridley Scott directing it? No, he's doing Alien Covenant, which we'll get to in a later video. Also, I was like, well, then who's going to direct it? We got Denis Villeneuve, probably butchering his last name, but he is a French-Canadian director who's done some of the best films in the past 6 years. Every one of his films I've really liked. We got Prisoners with Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal, which was a very dark, bleak look at what a parent would go through if they lost their child. After that, we had Enemy with Jake Gyllenhaal. That movie was a straight-up mindfuck. Then we had Sicario, which is such a good movie. Speaking of Sicario, the DP was Roger Deakins, who was working again with Denis on Blade Runner, which we'll get to in a bit. Then we had Arrival last year, which was my favorite film, it's 2016. It's my favorite film of 2016. So I'm like, okay, this could be interesting. Then you find out Harrison Ford's returning. You got Ryan Gosling in it. You got Roger Deakins as the DP, and boy did he shoot the shit out of this movie. I mean, it looks incredible. So found out that was happening. So my kind of got a bit more wanting to see it, and then saw the trailer earlier last year, and it's like, this could be pretty good. So went to the theater, I saw it, and this is like a 3-hour movie. It's not a action-packed Transformers movie. It's a slow moving, methodical puzzle, and I have to say, after getting out of it, it is probably the best sequel ever made for anything. It lived up and exceeded my expectations. So let's start off with the basic outline of the plot. So Blade Runner 2049 takes place 30 years after the first movie in the year 2049, and Ryan Gosling is a detective named Kay, and he is trying to investigate the whereabouts of a baby that a replicant gave birth to. And he's trying to figure this out before someone else does, because it would cause world chaos if a replicant, which is a man-made person, has the ability to create life. That means they're basically their own gods. So it's the whole movie's a mystery, trying to figure out who this lost child is. It's Los Angeles in 2049, like the first movie, and it's visually the city is stacked up higher. Where in the first movie it's kind of low, but you also got all the neon lights and crap higher and higher. There's smog everywhere. There's dust everywhere. It's snowing. It's just a very bleak-looking place. Kay's character is a replicant detective, which we find out pretty early in the film, and he is like walking around the police station, and a cop's like, "Fuck off, skin job." Like there's some like racial kind of allegories there. He goes to his apartment, ladies yelling at him, and he walks into his apartment, and written on the door in Sharpie is "fuck off, skin job," because no one wants a fake human around, you know what I mean? So that's one aspect of the story, is Kay trying to figure out who this, basically this mystery child is. And then also Tyrell Corporation, which was the company in the first Blade Runner which created the replicants, they disbanded. And then Wallace Corp, which is a company owned by Jared Leto's character, is trying to create the perfect replicant. And so he's kind of got like a god complex, trying to create life, and he's trying to create a replicant that can create life but isn't able to. So he's trying to go after the child, so he can expand his empire, basically. Also, Kay has got a digital girlfriend of a computer program called Joy, and there's some interesting dynamics there regarding relationships in the future. So it's a basic overview. Let's get more into spoilers, okay? So this film has a lot more story, has a more straightforward story as well compared to the first movie. The first movie is very enigmatic, like you don't know what's going on half the time. And I think that works for this movie. You don't need to have seen the original to have seen this one, but I think that definitely helps. Kay is an interesting character because he thinks he is the mystery child of the one child that was given, that was the birth child of a replicant, which he later finds out he isn't. Joy, who is his holographic girlfriend, realizes that there's limitations to her not being a real person. So, I mean, there's a scene earlier in the movie where Kay and Joy are looking at DNA to try to figure out who this mystery child is, and he's trying to uncover this mystery. And he looks at the 4 codes of DNA, and she comments like, "Only got 2 codes. I got 0 and 1, which is binary." And he says, "Well, twice as elegant, but half the codes." And then later on in the movie, there's a prostitute replicant that he meets, and Joy kind of tells that he's, kind of likes her, and so she calls her over, the replicant, and then Joy's trying to make a ways for Kay and her to be more intimate, because she's a hologram. She can't interact with Kay in any physical way. So they, in what's probably one of the most well-crafted scenes I've seen in any movie in the last 10 years, she melds herself holographically to the replicant, and then they make love. But the way it's shot with the hands overlapping and stuff is very, very well crafted. Later on in the movie, Joy dies, so Kay is pretty upset by that, because that's the only one person he was attached to, and he, later on in the movie, it's dark, and he's kind of upset about everything that's been going on. He looks up, there's a giant hologram that looks just like Joy, because Joy is like a program sold by the Wallace Corporation. And he looks up, and she's like, "You're just an average Joe." And that's the name that Joy gave him when he thinks he might be the mystery child, because he had a number before, and she's like, "A real person needs a real name," so she gives him the name Joe. And then he sees his hologram calling him Joe, and he realizes maybe this connection wasn't so special. It's all just code. It's all stuff that's pre-programmed, and that really puts a damper on his day. This film has Harrison Ford in it, as you know. He was Deckard in the first movie, and I think what's really bold for this movie to make, a bold choice, is to not have him show up until at least 2 hours into the movie, when the movie's two-thirds over, which is the length, of pretty much every movie these days. People are going into this movie thinking they're going to see Harrison Ford and Ryan Gosling do a buddy sci-fi cop comic, or not comedy, but adventure. And so he shows up, and he's just a grumpy old man who's bitter about what happened. Another thing I really like about this film is the lack of nostalgia pandering. Nostalgia pandering is when a movie like Force Awakens, Ghostbusters, Jurassic World brings back elements in previous installments. So audiences can rely on this nostalgia, um, and it gets more audience members and seats. Knowing, oh, Jurassic World, oh, is this gonna have a T-Rex in it? Yeah, it's gonna have a T-Rex in it. So when they rehash all these old ideas and don't do anything new. Um, Blade Runner has like two very brief moments of that, but it's very necessary to the plot. First one being when Ryan Gosling's character Kate is trying to find Deckard. He goes to a nursing home where Edward James Olmos' character Gaff, who was in the first Blade Runner, is in a nursing home, and he's asking Kay is asking Gaff where he can find Deckard. And he says this man is unfindable. He can't find a man that doesn't want to be found. That was necessary, I think, to the plot. And also the second one, which is the big reveal at the end of the movie, is Rachel, the mother of this mystery child and Deckard's love interest in the first movie. She comes back via a digital CGI double. When I first saw this, I didn't realize that's how they did it. Normally when you do these CGI human faces, there's something called the uncanny valley effect, where it's looks human but it's something a bit off, and sometimes most of the time that's because of dead eyes, where the eyes don't look lifelike. Tron was the first movie to really try this. Looks good for the most part, but then again you got the dead eyes. I thought Rogue One did a good job recreating a dead actor, Peter Cushing, but again sometimes it looks a bit off. I think this is the first film they actually perfected it, and I even think the visual effects artists recreated scenes from the first movie with this double to see if it would pass, and I think that's a pretty good idea. So Rachel comes back, but because Deckard is captured by Wallace, Wallace wants Deckard to give up the name of the child, the location of the child, and he doesn't want to, so Wallace tries to seduce Deckard by bringing back his former love interest, and Deckard knows there's something not right with it, knows this isn't Rachel, knows the eyes are off, like a different color than Rachel's eyes are. I thought that was a good way to bring closure to Deckard and Rachel's story. Another thing I really liked about this movie was the music. The first Blade Runner has a score composed by Vangelis, and everybody knows the music from the first Blade Runner. It's very angelic, melodic, a lot of harps. It sounds like stuff could be coming from the movie world itself. There's a scene where they're in the office building, there's a bunch of harps, and you could easily believe there's someone playing harps there. The soundtrack for the new movie, while not composed by Vangelis, is very different. It's very mechanical, very angry sounding, very dark, industrial. But then again, it also sounds like it could be coming from the movie world. So the two opposite sides of these scores, they contrast each other very well, I think. Another thing I really like is the use of miniatures. A lot of films these days, big studio films, don't use miniatures. I don't know why. I think with digital compositing these days, it'd be very easy to composite stuff in and make it look real. Denis wanted to do everything in camera as much as he could, and I applaud him for that. I strongly believe you try to do as much in camera as you can. Use CGI as a last resort. If you can blend the two together, I'm fine with that. But when you do CGI just for the sake of CGI, that's where I have an issue, and I thought they did a good job with that. Another thing I like about this movie is, how do you make a Blade Runner or sequel to Blade Runner? You don't make a sequel to Blade Runner. You do your own thing in this world, and I think that's what Denis did a very good job at. I was very iffy on seeing a sequel because it's like, oh, it's gonna be the same thing over again. No, it's very different. And then another thing is, I am amazed like this movie even got greenlit. This is a dormant franchise that's 30 years old. Got a slow moving, not action filled, a 3-hour movie, and I'm amazed the studio even spent the money to greenlight this. A lot of times movies these days are, you got a studio committee of executives, writers, trying to put action scenes here, try to make this movie so it has a mass market appeal. They do it with the Marvel movies, that's what they do with all these big blockbusters. But this movie It didn't look like there was any studio interference at all, and I applaud them for that. I applaud them for taking a chance. I mean, Hollywood, that's what's needed in Hollywood, creative risks. I mean, sure, Hollywood takes financial risks, but not very much creative when it comes to these big tentpole films. This film is amazing. It's one of the best films I've ever seen. My favorite film of last year. If you haven't seen it, go see it. If you haven't seen the first one, go see that and go see this one. You're doing yourself a big disservice by not seeing it. Overall, this is a 10 out of 10 for me, a perfect film. Yeah, thank you very much, guys, for watching. See you next time. Hey guys, if you like what you saw, please comment, like, and subscribe. That helps me figure out what I can improve on. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Frochki out.